Next, we have Going Mobile Imaging and Scanning with Jay Reister and Larry Heavner of Seiler. Larry and Jay both work for Seiler. Jay is a certified Trimble mapping trainer and has a geography degree from UW-Oshkosh, Wisconsin. He has worked in the GIS, GPS, data collection, and mobile imagery industry for 24 years. Since 2007, Jay has worked for Seiler Instruments as a senior mapping support technician, providing to customers GNSS field solutions and technical support for both Trimble and Esri field applications. Jay is also a geo mentor through the American Association of Geographers and Esri. And Larry, we were waiting on a bio from you, but you can introduce yourself there, Larry.
I think his bio is on out on our vendor website. I don't know if it made it into the presentation side. Can you hear me, David?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. Larry's muted right now, but I see him on screen. Okay.
Unmute him. So.
There we go. Got a careful
There you go, Larry.
From David to unmute myself. Hi, I'm Larry. I work for Seiler.
Larry's our cohort in crime, handling sales in southeastern Wisconsin and northern Illinois and parts of Iowa. Gale is his counterpart here in Wisconsin. She's on board here too.
Hi, Gale.
Hello,
So
all.
David, do I just share my screen and bring up the PowerPoint? Is that how we're doing this?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So basically the old joke is, do you not see my screen? So can you guys see it?
We see it, or I see it.
Thumbs up. That's great. Thumbs
Yep,
up. Okay.
thumbs up.
Thumbs up. All right. I hopefully don't take up all the time here, but Larry and Gale are on board here in case I miss something. I want to chime in. I just want to discuss a brief topic of mobile mapping and scanning. I kind of co-presented this similar topic last WLIA in February with Adam from AIRS. So I'm just going to shrink it down to a much smaller presentation here. So a little bit about Seiler Geospatial. Again, if you saw the opening this morning, we're based out of St. Louis, but we got offices throughout the Midwest. This is our team a couple years ago at a team meeting. So Going Mobile, imaging and scanning, and Larry's on board here. Where our office is located. Here's a quick little map if you can see that. And yes, that is an Esri AGO map. See how I tied that in there, being a silver business partner? All right. Hey, you gotta ad lib sometimes. All right, so real quick, some offerings that we do have, if you're not aware of, besides the speech that I gave this morning, we do have some field to finish workflows, whether it's with CAD, GIS, and or survey. We do have some certified Trimble staff and Autodesk trainers on board. And then also too, I did discuss that we've got land surveyors, certified GISPs, which Gale is one of them, certified CAD, Trimble trainers, and licensed pilots. Travis is actually here. He was at our booth. Travis Lemoyne gave a talk yesterday afternoon during the workshop session of drones and being certified pilots. So if you got any questions about that, please do stop by our booth because that does come into the mobile mapping theme that I have here today. So Going Mobile, imaging and scanning. So a lot of you have probably heard of both terms. Traditionally, if you hear about LiDAR, you're probably hearing about it that you've got some sort of contract with the county or the city and it's being flown every couple of years in conjunction with maybe some of the aerial photography. Bring it down to the ground level. That's where I'm going to talk about LiDAR more or less. And then the mobile mapping side of it, I'm going to talk more about, think of it as your Google car, if you will. And we'll discuss that in a couple slides coming up here. So what are some of the overall value propositions, if you will, that remain, whether you're doing traditional mapping or if you're doing mobile mapping? So number one, you want to reduce the risk and you want to have safety involved A lot of organizations want to make sure that their staff is safe if they're out there in traffic, so to speak, when doing data collection. Rapid and efficient data collection is definitely something to think about as far as the checklist goes. Minimize any unplanned maintenance, and that would be on equipment that you're using or renting or contracting with. Maintain positional accuracy throughout the project scope, and this should be on everybody's mind from the beginning to the middle to the end of the project. If you've ever taken classes from us or talked to a surveyor, it's best, of course, to check in on control throughout the project so that there isn't an oops halfway through the project or at the end of the project. And then understanding what you did not know. So that's a loaded question right there too. And Larry will help chime in on some of that a little bit later on some best practices of going.
Can I chime in now?
You may, sir.
So Jay's got the real key things that in front of you here on the screen with mobile mapping. Every time you put a resource in the field, you're running a risk, period. You can't get around it. If you follow insurance math, that's the way it works. Many of you out there have more things to collect than you have time to collect them. And when you do collect them, you'll end up collecting them over again because you collected them 5 years ago recently. So, and knowing, doing one asset at a time, mapping it, taking a picture of it, getting its GPS coordinates does take time, and you'll end up breaking your work up. During the course of all that, while you're taking data on the east side of the town, on the west side of the town, someone just hit a sign and you won't know about it for another 18 months. Just the simple things that can happen and you may not be aware of. And then when you have multiple data takers taking data over multiple time, you're naturally going to get some difference in the nature of the data. It's just the way it is. God forbid they use different instruments, because then you may run into different accuracies. So mapping in a way kind of wraps this all up at a single staged event with which you can get your geospatial data. And the final piece of it is, and I can talk about it more, but do you really know everything that's out there? And kind of the nature of gathering data via GIS is we think we know the data that's out there. Signs, fire hydrants, the normal things. Sometimes that isn't an accurate description of really what you see. What is the condition of that sign? Is it still there? Was it stolen? Those sorts of things mobile mapping can make you aware of, because it's just like running the tape. Meaning you like the Packers so much that you actually record the whole game so you can relive all those times that Aaron Rodgers has beat the Bears. You do the same with mobile mapping, except it's a little more boring. Anyway, thanks, Jay.
You're welcome. Thanks, Larry, for your input. And yes, Larry's a Bears fan. No, those are all great points. And I like to call it also like the tunnel vision of data collection. I've been boots on the ground. That was my first years, 1996 to 2006. I was boots on the ground. And when you're out there just focused on like some topics that Larry mentioned, just signs only, you could have possibly picked up some other infrastructure for the public works department while you were out there. But since you were so focused on signs, now I got to go back out and do all the garbage cans or the ADA ramps or whatever else might be in there, the street lights that are part of the public works directive, if you will. So some other talking points here. So what is mobile imaging and mobile scanning, which we'll get into? There are many tools to perform this task. There's traditional setups, of course, your traditional survey, setting up the tripod, you got a 2-man crew, which can be costly. And now you got 2 people in harm's way. Or the traditional handheld or backpack, like most of us have probably experienced, whether even it's just our phones these days out there. The problem is when you're staring down at your phone and you're walking, there's usually traffic that's involved, or you got other people coming up and down the sidewalk that you may be bumping into, and someone's going to get injured. I've seen it happen quite a bit. Gathering data consistently and safely. Larry pointed to this too, is that if you've got workers that are out there collecting data or infrastructure in different parts of the city, are they doing it the same? Are they doing it consistent? Does everybody have the right settings? Does everybody have the right GNSS accuracy? Does someone maybe using a sub-foot device? Someone's using a centimeter device. Collection over time, like Larry mentioned too. This can slow down a GIS database as far as what is current and what is not. And then just overall overcoming traditional nature of GIS data collection by putting boots on the ground, so to speak. Now, granted, you still have to put boots on the ground because when you do talk about mobile mapping, mobile scanning, mobile imaging, you can't see everything all the time, but you can sure see a lot. And we'll talk about that here coming up. Case in point, and I wish I would have gone back and gotten another photo of it, but right now there's 1.5 feet of snow on the ground here at this intersection. So I'll probably have to wait till spring, but this intersection here, if you can see this photo on the right, let me know if you do not see it. This was an intersection, the only traffic signal intersection in Evansville, Wisconsin by the Piggly Wiggly. If you know where this is, Highway 14 and M. They redid the intersection, therefore they also redid the ramps for pedestrians and where that sidewalk actually went. And if any of you know about dealing with public works and utilities, a lot of underground and above ground utilities had to be moved in order to move these curbs because they had to put in some improved turn lanes. So going back to multiple people collecting data over time, if we would have had a before, a during, so this would be the during and an after photo of this whole intersection, that would be a really good proof positive of change detection, if you will, over time. Not only for the signs, but the utilities that got moved, and just in general for the lane striping that needs to be contracted every couple of years through the Public Works Department. Larry, if you want to add anything about specific applications or industries, I got a long laundry list here, but I don't want to go bullet point by bullet point here. I think we can all read the eye-popping categories.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that we put everybody asleep. I think of it this way. Do you have a corridor that you need to map?
Right.
This can be pavement or non-pavement as well. I mean,
utilities,
pipelines, there's usually an access road that runs along that pipeline for maintenance. These mobile mapping applications can work in those applications as well. So it can be extended from, you know, doing asset inspections to doing maintenance inspections. Being able to capture the stands that hold up a pipeline and see if they've been damaged, corroded, or otherwise messed with in the field. So think of a corridor. If you've got a long space that you need to map everything in, mobile mapping fits for that application.
And just something else to point out too here on the right-hand side, there wasn't at this picture in time, but a couple images back, there actually is a gas line that runs through this area too. So not only do I got electric for those lights and that traffic signal, there was also a fiber box going nearby for a Charter aka Spectrum. And then I've got the gas petroleum. The only thing that I'm missing here at this particular intersection is water. That's self-contained back up the road going in and out of the subdivisions. But not only just above ground, but now we're dealing with a lot of below ground utilities, whether they're local or they're more of your larger utilities that you got to deal with for contracting out. Hey, you got to make sure all this stuff gets flagged properly before anything gets moved or the next pitchfork or digger comes in. So some tools that we have and are available, and trust me, there's many others out there by many other vendors, but just to highlight the ones that I've used so far, the top 3 here is called an NC Tech iStar Pulsar Plus. That's the mouthful right there. At the current time, this one is around a 2 meter accuracy. They are looking into getting a 1 meter accuracy device rolling out in the future. This thing can be either mounted to a car traditionally or any vehicle, whether it's an ATV, a Gator, whatever you can think of, as long as you can get it above your head and be plugged into your standard cigarette lighter, aka phone charger outlet. That's what it draws its power off of. And it's a 360 spherical camera with a GPS antenna on top, or you could use it as a backpack. We've had some people do this via trails where they walk trails. It is also being combined with about the fourth item down there, GeoSlam product, which I'll talk about a little bit, which is a LiDAR product, where you can combine both imagery and LiDAR for small indoor and or outdoor type mapping projects. The second item in the list there is called the Trimble MX7. You may have seen this at the booth in the past. I've driven this thing around our parking lot in the Franklin office, done some testing here in Evansville and throughout the Midwest and down at our St. Louis office. This is a Trimble sub-foot, again, 360 camera, higher accuracy GPS. You do run it through a post-processing routine via a local base station, similar to what you would do with your older GPS information or gear that we would sell. The third item, this bumps us up into the survey grade for two reasons. It's got higher accuracy as far as an IMU. It's got some better built-in guidance for knowing if you have an outage, a GPS outage, like going through a tunnel or you get a lot of tree canopy. It can include a wheel encoder, which then keeps track of your distance. But the key thing is it uses the imagery similar to the MX7, but on steroids, backwards down, and you'll see it in a photo here. So for pavement management, this comes in handy. It also has straight out cameras, but then it's got two sensors for doing point cloud. So this gets us into the high accuracy side where you don't necessarily need images to do data collection and or clearances on bridges or power lines. You could use the point cloud or you could overlay both, which is kind of cool. Real quick on the GeoSlam, this is being quite heavily used in our CAD division for AutoCAD, Civil 3D, and Map 3D point cloud solutions. ArcGIS Pro is starting to get into the point cloud business, so stay tuned to that. I did see something recently on an updated post for where ArcGIS Pro is going to be handling more point clouds in the future. That same GeoSlam can be handheld mounted, if you will, walking with it, or it can be mounted to drones, whether it's a UAV of a DJI or a micro drone. And Travis has actually done that at our office. And or if you want to go on the oceans, if you will, riverways, you got lakes that need to have a hydro boat, if you will, or bathymetric measurements. So that technically is your cloud point underwater, so to speak. Here's some quick photos of the land-based ones that are car mounted. Far left, NC Tech. That's the one that I said that could also be backpack, as long as you've got a power source to carry with you. Upper right-hand corner there is the Trimble MX7 out in front of our office at the Franklin office in Milwaukee. And then the MX9 down there at the bottom right, you can see the two sensors up there, the LiDAR sensors, if you will, for creating point clouds. This was a project that I was working on last May with a DOT here in Wisconsin, up north. Any questions about those land-based applications that we have available? And some of these are for rent, and of course, some are for purchase. We even do have some business partners. Ayers has rented from us in the past on an older MX8 system. So we do have some business partners that actually will do the driving and the processing of the data for the customers. So it's not that you have to get all in on these. You can actually be, if you will, a rental option to test these things out for small projects. And that does come in handy if it's just a small project and not a full city. Any thoughts about that, Larry?
I think actually rental's probably the best way to look at it. If you recall, I mentioned roll tape. And really, you're going to record all of this data. So once recorded, you can go through the data either one sign at a time or one hydrant at a time, however you want to do it, to bring it back in. And then for changes, maybe 2, maybe 3 years down the line, you roll the MX7 through there again, or the MX9, depending on your choice, under rental. And again, you've got, literally years worth of data again to go back and crunch, not on the street, but in the office. Perhaps with an intern or a new GISP coming up.
Sure. And something to point out too is, I don't know if any of you have taken on a sign project or even just a utility project. It takes a while to walk a city. Even if you are in your truck and then you're moving occasionally, You may be quite a distance between locations where even on here, if you try to look, I don't know if my mouse is working here or not, but if you look at the sign right here, Harrison Park, if you go north, I'm going to call it, back up the street, there wasn't another sign in this business park for another quarter mile because there was no need to. There was no other streets that were intersecting. But if you get into some cities, some small cities that have a lot of old downtown, you're going to hit a lot more signs quicker because there's less distance between each sign. But that's where mobile mapping really can come into play too, is you got a lot of distance to cover, a lot of ground to cover. And as Larry said, I could come back to this imagery in another month or two, and I could get all the curb line traced out of this or digitized out of this. I'm done with the sign inventory. Maybe I'm now working on anything that's in the curb and gutter, if you will, or down the road too. Maybe it's a water project because I'm clearly going to see the hydrant or the water valve sitting there in the lawn or in the median, if you will. And then I can export that out easily to any type of GIS or CAD extension that is necessary for the project. So here's just a quick screenshot of using some quick data collection tools. You can set up in some of these softwares your own data dictionary or feature code library, or even rip in a file geodatabase and use that current template that you already have painstakingly built, if you will. And so this is just a heads up digitizing is all this is. You can either choose to use stereo pair or you can use single image. This one happened to be a stereo pair. So I collected 2 signs real quick. This happens to be our Indianapolis office for Seiler. And ironically, the day we drove it, the State Patrol was there getting trained on the forensics division of Trimble. So there's all these state troopers. So we were pretty safe in that neighborhood that day. Some of you may be familiar with some of the software that's listed over here besides the Trimble software. Some of you may have heard of Mapillary or Topodot. Mapillary has actually switched up their pricing recently and has gone more to an open forum, but that is an online cloud-based software, which any of you could actually use with your phone, if you will. I've tested it out. You just walk down the street and you're taking photos or video, and as long as they're GPS tagged, geotagged, you can upload them to Mapillary, and next thing you know, they're in the database like Google Maps. Granted, you don't own it then, but that's a cool way to test out the technology, if you will.
Jay, let me just real quickly, going back to the kind of the LiDAR imagery, I did mention, think of a corridor, and a road is a corridor. A sidewalk is a corridor, and the Horizon line of products, if you're looking to get individual assets into your data, this is where the Zeb Horizon can become a very good tool. You can walk around the 150-year-old city building, capture that digital data, and be able to share that either into a CAD system or into a GIS system, depending on what your ultimate goals are, of course. But it does go down to, if you look at Google Maps and it shows the little walking guy, the little riding guy, think of those as corridors in the way you go out. So you can simply go out with the Zeb in a backpack, walk around a building, and you're able to capture that LiDAR data, that 3D data that can be shared with other tools. So it does extend from the very large miles of interstate highway down to being able to just simply walk a path in the forest and capture that data.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a second here and some examples of that. Here real quick, this is a photo overlaid on top of LiDAR and vice versa, if you will. The top section is showing the LiDAR here in an intersection. This was some MX9 testing that I did when I got training out at Trimble out in Denver. And down at the bottom, you can see the imagery and you can see the point cloud overlaid on top of it. So you get 2 different views or perspectives, if you will. And that top one actually is an overview shot, if you will. If you've ever messed around with point clouds, where you can get in there and orientate and rotate the imagery so you can actually see around, kind of almost getting into what a lot of cinematography has done over the years, getting very high-end digital. Some things that can happen on the backside after you're done with the data. How do I display all that information? Well, now you're just back into some of your traditional workflows, whether it's CAD or GIS. This is just those exact same signs that I drove and digitized, if you will, or feature extracted at our Indianapolis office. Here it is displayed in Arc Pro. So the easy part is viewing, and then doing your traditional workflows of querying and or archiving or attaching this to other databases. Maybe you're joining some tables as far as trying to do some over time instances of what did this street or this sign look like 5 years ago. If I had any previous records about that, then I could do some classifications and or timekeeping, if you will, of over time. This street has added signs or lost signs for whatever reason. You may need that for inventory purposes. So again, here's some softwares on the left I've listed that are great for viewing and analyzing that we work with in our day-to-day customers, whether it's mapping, surveying, or CAD. So here we go. So here's a slide. So this is a little bit different than your traditional cars, if you will, or the Google car. Larry had mentioned the GeoSlam or the Zeb Horizon on the left there. This can be used individually just by itself as a handheld with a power pack for both indoor and outdoor. And there's different versions of GeoSlam. And of course, some are better outside than others. The more recent versions are better for outside than they are for inside, depending on how far they can scan and how many points per second they can scan. That device also too can be paired up with that camera system that I was talking about, the NC Tech. So then you could get both, the best of both worlds. Travis has done something similar to what that middle photo is, the DJI helicopter that he's got, UAV. He has mounted that to the bottom. That video is actually out on our website. I have it in the PowerPoint here, but I don't think we're gonna have time to play it. He actually was able to pick up heat signatures on the backside of our building during winter because that's where the IT room was. That's where all of our internet comes in through, and that's where the HVAC controls were all at. So you could actually pick up the heat signatures on the outside of the building from using such a small device as this. If any of you ever watched Nat Geo, the first time I saw this before I even knew we had this as far as using it with customers was over in Jerusalem. They were down in the catacombs, if you will, of some of the old temples and churches, mapping out the hallways and everything else that is down underground, because you do not need a GPS for location on that, as long as you can get it orientated within a real world scenario. All right, lastly then, if you go into the water, we do rent this particular boat by Seafloor, included with some Trimble gear, if you will, out of our Franklin office. Steve Grady is the one to contact for that. Let us know if you ever have any interest in doing any bathymetric scanning, so to speak, and data collection. This is a very rugged boat, and as you can see, this is not your traditional Trimble receiver up top there. That is actually made for construction and marine. That device is pretty well sealed up compared to your traditional mapping and survey grade GNSS tools that we've got access to. But this one can come in handy, again, keeping people safe. You know, instead of being out there with a John boat or a canoe with your own little hydrolight, if you will, with a GPS unit, trying to figure out, how to map out a stream or a wetland area, you could remotely control a boat like this from the safety of the shoreline or from a bridge. These resources will be available. I can get this out as a PDF also, so that way they're hyperlinked. I'll send that off to Carmen, but do we have any questions or follow-up? Larry, seen on your end, is anything popping through in the chat window?
I don't see anything here, Jay.
Okay.
Of course, I'm a baby with this right now. I've been doing Zoom meetings, and out the whole logging in on time has been good learning for me.
And within these two, there's some customer stories, which I don't want to take up your time right now, but one that another dealer similar to us out west has done called Compass Data. They assisted Denver in doing a bus stop inventory. So this whole link right here is on a customer story on the Denver bus routes. And then here's one also with an MX7 fiber to home in the rural areas. And then also too, there's a Trimble blog out there for MX9, MX7 videos that you can watch, and also too some information about the NC Tech hardware. At any time you guys got any field photos or photos out in the field of your workers or you, we'd like to see them. You can enter in for a photo contest on our website. This is ongoing, so don't be shy. It's not like it's just an end of the year photo contest.
Please do share these photos, folks. We love them. We love to see your work. We love to see what you do.
Yep.
It's a reward in itself for us. So don't be afraid.
And if you give us our permission, you'll end up in the calendar like this one here on the far right, where there's a collage, if you will, of GPS, GNSS, mobile data collection in action. We got maybe another minute or two here, so if anybody has any questions, feel free to bring them up. I think one's popping up here in the chat window. Yep, very interesting, thanks. Yeah. And feel free to stop by the booth here in the next week or contact us offline if you've got any questions about mobile mapping in general or traditional mapping, if you will.
And if you're a Seiler customer and you have a little bit of difficulty out there, bullet point 3 and 4 are good things to take down.
Yes, yes, this is our new and improved way to get a hold of us for support. Both of these will open up a support ticket in our database, mapsupport@seilergeo.com, or our toll-free number. We've got 3 tech support people, which including me, here and available when you guys need us.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you,
Yep.
Larry.
You're welcome.
You're very
All right.
welcome. Thank you.